All right, welcome in. I'm just sitting here, Joe Murray. Happy 420 to everybody out there today. It is going to be a big week here on Just Sitting Here. It's NFL Draft Week, so we have a plethora of guests lined up for you. I'll show you who that is. We're going to be joined by Ted Johnson in just a little bit. Hopefully, we can take care of some of those technical issues that we're having, but I will run down the lineup for this week. Ted Johnson today. Mike Flynn tomorrow. We got Mike Lockhart, Bob Sosi, John Sarnides this week for draft week. So there'll be a ton of stuff going on for draft week this week. We'll go to Ted Johnson in just a minute here. Just want to recap the what we got going on today. There was a competitive eating competition over the weekend. The Michael Jordan documentary last night. I get some takeaways from that. Of course, draft week, as we mentioned. 3-time Super Bowl champion Ted Johnson joins me in just a minute here. Patriots unveiled new uniforms today. We'll get thoughts on that. And of course, it's 420. I'll give you my top 10 stoner movies in a huge show announcement that's savage. So stay tuned for that coming up in just a little bit. Again, it's Joe Murray just sitting here. And it is a big draft week coming up. And I do want to bring in who I think we have it all set to go here. 3-time Super Bowl champion. My good friend Ted Johnson. What's going on today, Ted?
Oh, what's up, buddy, man? Sorry about that, the issues there to get started, man. I'm doing good. How you doing, pal?
I'm good, man. You're looking good over there. I appreciate you taking a few minutes here just to kind of prep you a little bit. This is me and you hanging out. So if you want to swear, you want to let go, like this is why I'm doing this. Obviously, not getting the reps now because we can't get into the studio. There's no sports to talk about whatsoever. So I figured, hey, let's start a podcast. And I, bring in the guys I work with. We'll shoot the shit. And obviously, you had a great career, some interesting stuff post-career that we'll get into today as well. And, we'll just shoot the shit about the Patriots, man. And what's going on. So
you got it, buddy.
Again, I know, I hope I'm not bothering your, what's today? Your push when it comes to working out, push day?
Joe Murray, man, I can't believe you remember that. Today is my push day, so it's chest and quads today, and so I will. I've been lucky, man. I'll be honest. I've been pretty fortunate. I have a key fob to a wellness center that has some dumbbells that I'm able to do some things. Not a lot, not a ton, but it's just enough. So I'm grateful for the access. I go in there, I'm all by myself and lock up and wash down. If I didn't have the workouts, Joe. You know me, it's my salvation. It's what keeps me off, out of trouble. So I'm grateful that I have some access to at least a wellness center. That's the one heartbreaker for me in this whole thing is just the not access to a gym. There's going to be a lot of people. I worry that are probably going to maybe fall off the wagon, if you will, because of what's been going on in the last month. And so idle time is not good for people who are deal with. The issues and addiction. So for me, I've been grateful to have at least a place to go and work out to some degree, not like I normally would, but at least a little bit, which is keeping me at least sane in some respects.
All right, man. So we'll certainly get into that. Obviously, your career draft is coming up this week. You were involved in an interesting draft, so we'll talk about that in a minute here. And of course, people can join the show, so people can chat in, Ted. You can see it. I'll pop them up on the screen as well. Someone's already calling you a stud right off the bat. My buddy Baltazar checking in. Is he really a romance novel reader?
Yeah, that used back in the day. Yeah, that was kind of a that was kind of a thing. I had interest in reading Sandra Brown novels. Sandra Brown was, I wouldn't call her like a hardcore romance novelist. She had always had like a strong male role in her books, but there was always like a murder mystery too. And so I became a fan of her books, read her books, and believe it or not long after she found out I was a fan of her books, I met her daughter and her family. And 5 months later, it was a whirlwind romance, man. I was engaged to Sandra's daughter, Rachel, and it didn't work out. Ultimately, it never came to fruition, that marriage. So it's probably best for both sides. But yeah, I was actually a big fan of Sandra Brown novels.
Wow. I did not know that. I wish I knew that, because I would have you read excerpts, and that would be fun to like keep in the system every once in a while. Like go down romance lane.
Yeah,
with Ted Johnson. So I'll pull these up during the show. People call you the real life Hulk. I'll see if I can find the Halloween costume that Ted did one year.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Of course, Teddy, does he still have the white away jersey 52? Is what Casey is asking.
Oh, you know what? I don't know if I do. My son just got me. He just got me. He's a big collector of all things. Of my career, and he got me my old silver. There used to be old silver jersey.
Oh yeah,
for a couple games, and so it's the silver jersey with T Johnson, because Bethel Johnson was on the team, and so what they do is, if there's more than somebody has the same last name, they put your initial in front. So it's T Johnson with the silver, which is really cool. Jake ordered that for me a couple days ago. I guess it's a whole process in trying to get those. The Patriots saved those for a rainy day and then put them out for auction, I think, eventually years down the road. So he was able to get his hands on that, which is cool. Yeah, I don't know if I have a blue one. I don't know if I have the white one. I'll have to look, though.
All right, cool. We'll talk about the uniforms in just a little bit here. So we'll have some fun, Ted. Then we'll get to know you, and then I'll ask you a bunch of questions, because a ton going on this week. Of course, the draft, and I like to look back. That's what we do. We have fun looking back and talking about the glory days here. Just having some fun right off the bat. If you could name a former teammate to be quarantined with, because right now, obviously, we're all stuck in the house. But if you could pick one player throughout your career that you could be quarantined with, let's call it 14 days, 30 days, whatever, who'd be the one guy?
Good question. That one's easy for me. There's one guy who comes out of Knoxville, Tennessee. I don't know if many people remember Todd Collins. Todd Collins was a third-round draft pick out of Carson Newman. I don't know if you guys, if you remember Todd Collins, number 15.
Oh yeah, dude.
Todd
59, right?
Todd's one of my best friends, dude. He, a crazy story about Todd Collins. So I think Todd was drafted back in 94 or 93. I can't remember exactly. I was in 95. I showed up. So Todd Collins played right next to Vincent Brown. All right. Vincent Brown, the Undertaker. Oh, yeah. Vincent was one of the most intimidating guys you've ever met. Just a nice guy, great to play with. I only played with him for a year, but regardless, he played side by side with Todd Collins. Todd Collins was the incumbent starter and inside linebacker when I was drafted in 1995. I showed up for first day of training camp, and Todd did not show up. He did not show up for the start of the 1995 season. And so a couple injuries in front of me. There you go. There's Todd. Todd, there was a couple injuries in front of me. I was pushed to the front of the line. What happened was Todd took that entire year off, 1995 off. He was still under contract with the Patriots. He did not report to camp. I guess him and Coach Parcells had a dispute that carried over from the following season, and he just kind of lost his desire to play football. And thank God he showed up in 1996, though. And him and Bill Parcells, man, they buried the hatchet. And he played 3 years for us, and I played side by side with him. One of my absolute favorite guys to ever be around. His nickname, Joe, was Swamp Chicken. You have to, if you've never met anybody from Knoxville, Tennessee, it is like a wild ride. The way guys from that region talk, the way they describe things, the way they view the world. Swamp Chicken, also known as Todd Collins, one of my absolute favorite human beings on this planet. And so he will make you laugh. And how does he get the nickname Swamp Chicken?
Oh yeah, that's what I want to know.
Story goes that somebody asked him about, I don't know, something about Knoxville. And, Todd has a wild imagination. I mean, absolutely wild imagination. And he just would talk about these swamp chickens that would come up out of the swamp, and then he just come up right out of that swamp, and he's got these swamp chickens running around, chasing after my cattle. Just crazy things that come out of his mouth. So hence the name Swamp Chicken, because he declared to everybody that there were chickens that came out of the swamp. I mean, there's no swamps in Knoxville, by the way, by his house. So that's that's who I would want to be with. And I would say honorable mention to who I'd want to be quarantined with of former teammates. Probably the next guy would be Larry Izzo. Larry Izzo is a souped up, charged up version of Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I've never seen a guy more paranoid in my life. I mean, so it's just funny to see his behavior when he always feels like someone's dissing him. He thinks that everybody's out to get him. He's just a paranoid guy. But one of my absolute favorite guys ever, man, is Larry Izzo.
So you don't have to answer this, but there's a story that I've heard from a former athlete of the Patriots. Supposedly, Larry used to eat his meals on the toilet. Can you confirm or deny that?
Yeah, well, yeah. Larry had some very interesting restroom hijinks, man. He really did. I heard that was true. I don't want.
All right.
I don't want to give it solid confirmation, but you have to understand. So it's Fridays was always pizza day in the NFL, at least with the Patriots. Has he been known to maybe take a pizza in with him to the bathroom? I don't know if I can say for sure, but I think that there's a good chance that might have been a possibility. And one thing you got to know about Larry Izzo when we talk about the restroom hijinks, is Larry Izzo introduced me to one of the greatest ideas of all time, and that is baby wipes. All right. Baby wipes was introduced by Larry Izzo into the mainstream consciousness for going to the bathroom. And so I've pretty much been, ever since I discovered that from him many, many years ago, I've carried on that tradition as well. So the flushable baby wipes, I highly recommend for your bathroom pleasure. There you go.
I'm a baby wipes guy myself. So.
Big time, right?
I am into that. All right, cool. So I wanted to start off with that, have some fun with it. Of course, we're all dealing with the quarantine at this month, but it's draft week, Ted. Your draft story is very interesting. We've talked about it before. I know some of our new listeners haven't heard it, but the 1995 NFL draft led by Kajana Carter, I believe, right?
Dude, can you believe that? Kajana Carter. Think about how far we've come, Joe. Number one overall pick in the 1995 draft was a running back out of Penn State.
That would never happen nowadays. Like Zeke Elliott, of course, is a great running back and was a top 3 pick or whatever. But you will not see that ever again when it comes to the draft. But let me throw out some names to you: Tony Baselli, Steve McNair, Kerry Collins, Kevin Collins. We know about the Mike Mamula story because we're all here. Joey Galloway, played for a time. Kyle Brady had a nice run.
Yeah.
JJ Stokes played with the Patriots for one of their Super Bowls. Warren Sapp, Hall of Famer. Ty Law, Hall of Famer, which we'll get to in a minute. Derek Brooks was another. And, of course, Curtis Martin, a guy named him. And then Terrell Davis, also in that draft as far as Hall of Famers go. But the Patriots draft that year, they go Ty Law 1, and then a guy named Ted Johnson in the second round, and in the third round was Curtis Martin. But from what I remember, you said that you played golf that day. You were with your old man. It was on ESPN2, so you had to go. And your old man, they owned a barbecue joint called the Rib Tickler, and Correct. You guys had to go there to watch it that day. And the guy who was drafted before you was a punter. What the hell was going through your head when you thought you might be a late first round pick? You drop to the second, and a punter gets drafted before you.
Yeah, no, it was a crazy ride. So I thought at best case scenario, I maybe would have stuck in at the end of the first round, and it was pretty much because of two teams. The Kansas City Chiefs drafted late that year in the '95 draft, and so did the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns head coach at the time was Bill Belichick. And Bill, he was the one head coach that took interest in me at the combine. He grabbed me, took me into a stairwell. Him and I are shooting the shit about cover 2, what my reads were, what do I see in this coverage. And so he was the only head coach that really, what I got one-on-one FaceTime with at the combine. So I thought, well, maybe they will look they will draft me. And I went in for a trip for Kansas City as well, and I thought maybe them in the late first would maybe potentially go there. But I was projected to go middle of the third round. That's where all the pre-draft kind of had me going, is the middle of the third round. So where I ended up at the end of the day, I'm very, very grateful where I ended up. But you're right. Todd Sauerbrunn, a damn punter, was the 56th overall pick in that year's draft out of West Virginia. And I'll never forget it, man. And I'm sitting there, and we're at my parents' restaurant, and you know the dining room's full, and we got all the TVs on, and we're all watching it. And I just remember when Todd was drafted, I said, I need a beer. I need a beer. Are you kidding me? And then on the clock was the New England Patriots with the 57th pick. Well, I have to tell this one story that it was kind of shocking that it kind of fell this way. I didn't tell a lot of people that this happened to me, but a few days before the draft, the year I was drafted, I was in my agent's office, who you mentioned Tony Baselli. He represented Tony Baselli out of USC at the time. He was out of Boulder, based out of Boulder. He's actually Baker Mayfield's agent now. He's been in the business almost 40 years, Jack Mills. I went over to Jack Mills' office a few days before the draft. I went in to see him. He said, Ted, get on the phone. Somebody wants to talk to you. I said, okay. I get on the phone. I answer it, and I said, hello. And he says, Ted, this is Charlie Army. I'm the director of pro scouting, or director. I don't think he said director of player personnel, because I think that was Bobby Greer at the time for the Patriots.
Yep.
But Charlie Army said, if you're there in the second round, we're going to get you. That's what he said. And I'll never forget it. And I kind of just dismissed it. I just didn't put a lot of stock into it. But when Todd was on, Todd Sauerbrunn, that damn punter went before me, and Patriots were on the clock, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. My name could be called right now. And sure as shit it was. 57th pick overall. The Patriots selected Ted Johnson out of University of Colorado. And I was talking to Bill Parcells 5 minutes later, Joe, and it was – I'll tell you, the draft for a lot of guys, I don't know if it's still this way, but, you know, most football players come from – they don't come from Ozzie and Harriet backgrounds. They don't come from like this. A lot of the typical profile of a football player comes from dysfunction, comes from neglect, abuse, and football becomes their family, right? Coaches become pseudo fathers, teammates are pseudo brothers. You have you have a schedule. There's expectations for you. You're part of something that maybe you never got to experience in your real home life at home. And so it's a natural kind of attraction to the game because of the dynamic of it. So I came from a similar kind of background like that. I did not come from the healthiest home. I had a mom that was not the greatest mom, was in and out of the house, never really present emotionally or physically a lot of times. And so it was my way out. And so getting drafted, Joe, meant so much more than I get to play in the NFL. It meant I have a life. I have a direction. I have all that stuff I went through as a kid is now I'm being rewarded with the hard work and the perseverance. And you got to understand, I was not a good student in school. My mom didn't ask about my homework, care what my grades were. I mean, I barely got a 2.1 GPA. It was pathetic because I just never had any direction in that way. And so football was my way out, man. It was like truly out of the movie. Was it All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise? I mean, it was straight out of that movie. I mean, it was my way out. And so I knew I was good at football, and that's what I was going to hang my hat on. And so when I got drafted, it just validated me. And it meant so much more to me, like it does for a lot of guys, than what people can ever realize, because it's finally you got out and you escaped the past, and now you have a bright future. And so it meant so much more than what you might think to me at that time when the Patriots drafted me. And then you get drafted to a team, let's face it, there was 30 teams at the time I got drafted, or maybe it was just starting. No, it was 30. And I could have gone to 29 other teams, Joe. I could have gone to it is such a crapshoot. Pete Carroll said that to me one time. He said, Ted, it truly is a crapshoot. But I went to the one team that turns out to ultimately be the greatest dynasty in the history of the sport. And I played in an era for 10 years from 95 to 05 where I was part of something that we started the dynasty. Yep. And I played with Hall of Famers. I played with the greatest coach of all time. I played with the greatest quarterback of all time. And I got to have 3 head coaches, Joe, and I've told you this before, in 10 years. How many guys can say they played 10 years for 3 different head coaches, and all 3 head coaches are going to be in the NFL Hall of Fame? I mean, Pete's going to be in there, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And so Parcells is already in there, and we know Bill's going in. So I had a very unique kind of, I think, career in that sense. A lot of it's just luck. So much of it's luck, but I lucked out big time, and I was grateful that Parcells drafted me because I fit what he liked in a 3-4. I was a bigger inside linebacker. I liked the physicality, nothing sexy about my game, but it fit his system. And so I was very grateful that they picked me on draft day.
Yeah, and just a couple other you were sandwiched between 2 Hall of Famers, Ty Law, Curtis Martin. Jimmy Hitchcock had a nice little career. Dave Wallabaugh was a damn good center for a while as well.
Joe, and here's the thing. It's so funny, when you watch the Patriots now, and I swear, man, we're going to talk about the draft, I know, in a little bit here, but last year I looked at the draft by the Patriots, and I was like, this is a good draft. I mean, I watched all those guys on film, all of them, all the Patriot players that were drafted last year, and I thought these guys are going to make immediate impacts in this team last year. And they really didn't, other than the punter. Jake Bailey was about
punter, and maybe Chase Winovich a little bit.
A little bit, right? But the point is it's shocking to me how many rookies do not really contribute to Bill Belichick, teams. I get drafted. Ty Law starts his rookie year. I start my rookie year. Curtis Martin starts his rookie year. Dave Wallabaugh started his rookie year. Jimmy Hitchcock kind of worked in and out of the starting lineup. It's amazing how, we all contributed right away. And now it seems like it's so hard for rookies to really have an immediate impact.
They like red shirt. The Patriots do that with every running back that comes up beside Sony Michel, I guess, who was a first-round pick. But, and it's funny. The wide receiver last year, the Patriots select N'Keal Harry. All the other receivers that went after him all made big plays. Deebo Samuel, a ton of other wide receivers last year did really well. They plug and play right away, but it's like Belichick kind of handcuffs. Yeah, I don't want to say handcuffs them, but at least makes them earn their keep a little bit. And maybe that, I don't want to call it the Patriot way, but when you were there, was Parcells' way. When Belichick was there, like it took Lawrence Maroney. I think, I mean, shit. Remember him after Corey Dillon? The kid hit a hole. He was dancing, and they had to put the cuffs on him. Like Gerard Mayo was plug and play and started right away. Richard Seymour is another guy that started right away, but it takes these guys a little bit. But yeah, incredible draft. I want to get back to the coaches in a minute here, but one you didn't mention, who I think is a Hall of Fame coach as well. Bill McCartney from Colorado. And if you look at that team, dude, this was like you're playing the games and I'm watching them at home. All right. And this Colorado team led by Cordell Stewart.
Yeah.
I look at this and it's, the only loss was to Nebraska that year, who was obviously a wagon, but you beat Notre Dame. You beat you beat Oklahoma, Michigan, Texas, Wisconsin. That Colorado team was one of the best teams of all time. And you played for the 4 possible Hall of Fame coaches in your career.
I had great coaches. Joe, man, you get me juiced up talking about Colorado football. I was so grateful to go to school there, man. I was the class of 91. The Buffs won the national championship. I mean, Colorado football wasn't on the map until Bill McCartney got there. And he had a coaching staff that was so good. And they recruited hard in Texas, hard in Louisiana, hard in California. And they got talent there, man. And it all started with those teams in 89 and 90 that both those teams competed for national championships. Lost to Notre Dame in 89, beat Notre Dame in 1990 in the Orange Bowl to win co-champions with Georgia Tech at the time. And then I was a class of 91 after that. And Cordell Stewart was he was my locker mate next to me for the whole 4 years. We had that team my senior year. A lot of people think that's the best Colorado team ever. Even though we didn't win the national championship. We had something. It was something about Nebraska, man. I'm 0-3-1 against those bastards. I can't stand Nebraska. I hate that team more than any team in the NFL. I always would say they were cheaters. I mean, there was all these rumors that, guys were doing steroids there. And so you just thought, okay, the way I was, you know what my worst games were ever, Joe, in college? Were the game against Oklahoma State, because we always played Oklahoma State the week after Nebraska. And I was so damn beat up from that Nebraska game. I didn't have much left in me in the game after. But that was what you were always told. These guys, the offensive linemen walk on there, and then 5 years later they leave All-Americans. So that's what you've always kind of been told, and you hear every guy I've ever met from Nebraska are great guys. I absolutely love the guys, but I couldn't stand that program because we can never beat them. And the best chance we had to beat them was my senior year, and we just crapped the bed, man. Our offense did nothing that day. And God, who was the running back? Lawrence Phillips was the running back.
Tommy Frazier.
Tommy Frazier, who I would say is maybe one of the best collegiate football players of all time. Tommy was so good. Yeah, the only thing is, so you're right, that non-conference schedule before Wisconsin, Texas, Michigan, the Hail Mary pass to, Cordell Stewart to Michael Westbrook against Michigan. Do you know who was covering Michael Westbrook in that game?
Hall of Famer Ty Law.
Which you'll bust his balls about it, and he does not appreciate that. I learned. Yeah, we had 10 guys drafted in that class that year in 1994, the 95, excuse me, that the draft I was in. We had 10 guys, and so I was a proud program at one time. We have not really come close in a long time to being that high quality of a team, which is unfortunate.
All right, Ted, we'll get into some good stuff in a little bit here, but you mentioned people who get drafted and get into the league. They come from troubled backgrounds, or they're just not your typical, come from like the greatest situations, right? I sometimes joke with you and call you the Carlsbad kid. You know what I mean? You go to Colorado, you play in 4 Super Bowls, you have an interesting story post-career as well. And I want to get into that because you played 4 Super Bowls. You guys played Green Bay in the first Super Bowl, the jambalaya year. I want to get into the Parcells stuff in a little bit, but you were a standout in that game. We always joke about what John Madden said about you, loved you as a middle linebacker. You guys get back to it. The Drew Bledsoe, era happens. They're going to build Gillette Stadium. You win the Super Bowl in 01 after just a crazy year with some stuff that off the field. You come back in 03 and 04, and then 05, you're out of the league, man. Oh, you retired.
Yep.
I've talked to you, and you mentioned you went to some places after that.
I did.
Do you ever regret playing football, considering maybe some of the mental health troubles that you have at times?
Yeah, no way, Joe. No way, man. I love the game of football. And a lot of people, that's what I do worry, because a lot of people, when they hear me talk about the head issues and the multiple concussions and life after, they think if me sharing that story is me disparaging football. That's not the case. And that's not the case at all. It's just, I think it's hard for some people to kind of want to hear the truth, the whole truth. It's like, and I get it, people don't necessarily want to know how the sausage is made. They just want to see their football, not hear about what's going on and the damage, because I don't think people want to have to guilt watch football. I think they just want to watch it guilt-free. But it's so hard to deny all the information and all the data that we know and regarding head trauma now. We can't ignore it. It's just overwhelming. And so people just need to know what the players are going through. The players, let's face it, the players, more importantly than anything, need to know what all the risks were. And when I was playing, we're not told totally what all the risks were. And so we found that out. I found that out after I retired. I retired, Joe, because my head hurt. I just knew my personality was changing. I knew that something was going on up in my brain that was not normal. And so I retired not knowing terms like post-concussion syndrome, traumatic brain injury, second impact syndrome. CTE hadn't even been discovered until I think 2006 when Dr. Amalu did an autopsy on Andre Waters' brain. And then that kind of opened up the whole can right there. But I had one more year left on my contract going into the 05 season. And I just decided I needed to step down. I felt like something was going on. There was maybe some long-term damage there. The only thing I would do different, the only thing I would do different is if I knew then what I know now, Joe, I would have. I was an advocate for my own health, and the stories out there with me and Belichick. What happened? All right, if you want to really know more,
Google it.
Google Ted Johnson,
Yeah.
concussions. And the article that kind of put my story on the map and really created a lot of change and brought awareness to this issue was an article in 2007 in the New York Times about an incident that happened with me and Bill in 2002. Okay. And so a lot of my problems started in that summer, but I've forgiven, I've moved on. And I've helped a lot of people in coming forward with my story. The only thing I would do different, Joe, is in that moment where I was pressured to go back out there against doctor's orders, I would have said, "You're crazy. No way in hell am I going out there." But here's the thing. I don't think that would never happen today. That happened back in an era where there wasn't a lot of scrutiny. There wasn't a spotlight on it. And so coaches could get away with things that there's no way in hell they could get away with now. And so, that's water under the bridge, but that's the only one thing I would do different is, I would be even more of a stronger advocate for myself than I was. And I still was, trust me. It's a whole backstory that we don't get into, but it was.
Ted, as someone who was a fan, I was a fan and a follower. Dude, I played ball too, man. I didn't care. I didn't play at the level you did, but shit, my head hurt. I wasn't coming out of the game. Are you kidding me? And it wasn't a pride thing. It was just like, I'm not letting my guys down. You know what I mean? Like I could, and like, you played at a huge level, but there weren't guys coming out, Ted, back then, and you deserve some credit for that, because I guarantee you've talked to other people that you've impacted along the way. And where I'm going with this is, I've been watching a lot of. I'm a big wrestling fan, and on Viceland there's these documentaries called Dark Side of the Ring, and they go back in history about some things that happened. And you probably remember the Chris Benoit story. But your buddy Chris Nowinski, former wrestler, he called his father and said, "Hey, do you mind if we take his brain?" They found that he was essentially had issues of an 80-year-old man in his head. And you can watch the story, you can Google it, everything like that. But Nowinski said that he had a conversation with him, saying, "Hey, man, like you really serious about this concussion stuff?" And Benoit wanted to reach out to him, and I guess he just never. Chris called him, and I guess he told the story. He called, they spoke. He said, "I'll call you back," and that was the last time they talked. I think Chris knew he had something wrong with him. Didn't talk to anybody. This is a guy that's out there on TV every week, one of the top performers. Who's he going to talk to? There's no mental health people out there to help these people. And where I'm going with this is, did you see the movie Concussion? And did you see the Aaron Hernandez documentary?
Okay. It's funny. I get asked that all the time, the concussion movie. At the beginning of my discovery about what was going on, and I kind of attacked it and researched it and wanted to know everything about brain trauma that I could. And I really did a ton of studying. The one guy that, used to always come up in articles I would read, who was kind of what I would say was the pioneer in some respects that doesn't get a lot of credit, was a hockey player by the name of Pat LaFontaine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Pat LaFontaine was, I never forget, he said in an article one time, he said, the coaches knew I was struggling and they still put me out there, and I had a hard time understanding that. And that was a hard thing for me, is when you kind of like, you always think trainers, doctors, coaches, they have your best interests, no matter what. Well, that wasn't the case at the highest levels. It's a business, and it's about money, and it's not necessarily about the player. And Patrick found that out the hard way. I had to find that out the hard way. And so initially, when I was kind of figuring out what was going on with me, I just dove head first into it and really wanted to learn everything. Over time, though, it was kind of like the story started piling up, Joe, and it was almost as if I had kind of lost this, I don't know, fervor to know any more than I already knew. So I did not go see the movie Concussion. I've lived the movie. I kind of know the stories already,
Yeah.
And so it's weird. It's almost like it's too much for me at this point.
Yep.
I want to help guys and I want to
Yeah.
like inform guys, but I don't know if I want it thrown in my face all the time. So I elected not to see that movie. And here's the thing: is any surprise? I think that it flopped in the movie theaters. I don't think it did well at all because I just don't think people want to know all the facts. Fans truly. Because then they're going to start feeling guilty about the game they love, and we all love this game, all love the game of football. But I think I just think it's important that the players more than any entity understand what the risks are, and so they can make informed decisions. And they are. You see more and more guys retiring earlier, but I would say this: the money is way better than even I had it, and I had it way better than the guys before me. So you don't have to play as long.
Like a guy like Luke Kuechly, who probably one of the best undersized middle linebackers in all football. Guys retired before 30 years old and made a boatload of money.
Hey Joe, do you remember Luke Kuechly it was a Monday night game a few years ago? He got hit and he started bawling. I mean, uncontrollably. Luke Kuechly, who I think is an absolute stud. I mean, has more talent in his one, finger than I ever had in my entire body. He got hit and he started bawling, couldn't control himself, and got carted off. He got carted off for a concussion. And he still played 2 more years, kind of similar to what happened with me. I had that same exact reaction when I got a concussion 4 days after I got my first one. And that's where all the problems started. And I just cried uncontrollably, couldn't stop crying because of that hit. And that was when I knew I was doing some long-term damage. And Luke, here's the thing. These guys, ignorance is not bliss for these guys. They know that getting your bell rung, like you mentioned earlier, you just thought that's how it was supposed to feel. Like, I got dinged, I got bell rung, very common terms used in football all the time. Those, we know now, are concussions. And those added up over time could mean trouble for you. Not everybody, because every brain's different. But for me, it really caught up to me, and it did with Luke. So we put a guy that, if he was totally healthy up here and he could play, 15 more years, the guy was in tremendous shape. But I saw that when he retired, how heartbroken he was and sick he was. But he knows, he's from guys that came before him, that there could be, trouble ahead, and you want to, stop sooner rather than later with that.
And you're an advocate for that, man. So you look back on it, dude. I mean this like sincerely. Like, you played in 4 Super Bowls, man. You were a 2nd round pick. Played with Hall of Famers, won 3 Super Bowls. You said it. Played for the greatest coach of all time, greatest quarterback of all time. Like, to tell you the truth, man, I wouldn't regret anything either, man. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, like that's what you live for, dude. And you live to tell the story. So, all right, I wanted to just get the personal stuff out of the way here. That's kind of what I do. Bring everybody in, tell their story, and then we move on. So, I get a question for you again. What Patriots dynasty was better, the first 3 or the last 3? And
do you have an opinion on that?
Okay, I'll be completely honest. I think there was more talent overall on the last 3. And what I mean by that is Gronkowski. Okay, it's weird. What I mean is, I think that the last 3, they persevered. They, maybe they played some harder teams. I don't know, but I do know this: the first 3 Super Bowl, the first one was unheard of. The second one was like, oh shit, they're here, and the third one was like, these are badass motherfuckers. Like, that's how I took it, and I look back at that 04 team as like the best team of all the Patriots teams. So it's weird for me because I know what those first 3 were, but I don't want to discredit what the last 3 were.
No, dude, the last 3 were, you talk about like a well-oiled machine. I mean, they were just, it was like there was a formula, the culture was established, there was a system, there was, you had pillars on offense with Edelman and Gronk and Brady. You had, not necessarily dominating defenses, although, the the 18 championship, that defense really started to figure out after the bye week. But it just was such a smooth operation. It really, really was. But of course, I'm biased, and I would always say that first dynasty to me was more impressive because we were establishing what the Patriots were going to be years after. Like all those players in those first 3 championships kind of helped pave the way for what that culture was for the last 20 years. It's so funny in the juxtaposition and personalities from teams to team. Like, we had attitude, man. We had guys that had tons of confidence, personality. I mean, we had swagger. In today's players, these guys are robots. They are just, there's not a lot of personality. There's not a lot of, I don't think Bill gets challenged a whole lot. We had guys, Ty Law would challenge Bill. Rodney Harrison would challenge Bill. Hell, I would challenge Bill. Didn't really like it, but, we would at least, we had personality and a collective confidence that was unmatched. And you're absolutely right. That 04 team, the confidence was through the roof. We knew what we were capable of. We knew we were going to win every single game, and we did practically, right? It was unreal. And I didn't realize, I'm watching some of these old games. My son's, he's got me watch a lot of the old games. I didn't realize how bad or banged up our secondary was in 04. We had a lot of guys missing in our secondary in 04 during the championship at the tail end. And so we kind of just held on. But if we had, Ty was hurt, Asante Samuel was hurt, Eugene Wilson was hurt at times. And so we really lacked some of that potency in the secondary. But even that, we were so unbeatable. The only hiccup we really had that year was that Miami game, the last game of the season. We just sometimes have problems win down there. But to me, those first 3 put this kind of program on the map and established a culture and an attitude and a way of doing things that these other teams that came after us, I think, really benefited from.
Just to throw out that 04 defense, Seymour first-round pick, Warren first-round pick, Bruschi third, Johnson second, McGinnis first, Vrabel was a third-round pick, Harrison a fifth-round pick, Eugene Wilson was a second-round pick. But, Vrabel and Harrison came over from elsewhere. Everyone else, right, pretty much from the draft.
Yeah, Vince Wilfork, a first-round draft pick. Yeah, we were stacked, man. We were absolutely stacked, and we just had so much confidence, and there was complete and total buy-in from our team. And it was, it happened, I guess, really in 01. It just kind of towards the end of the season, it was just like, okay, I always tell the story, like Bill on these Saturday morning meetings, he kind of put tape together of the upcoming opponent that we're going to play the next day. And there'd be a team meeting. He'd always go start with offense and go, offense, if we do these 3 things, we'll win the game. Defense, if you do these 3 things, we'll win the game. I don't know, double team Wayne Corbett in the slot on 3rd down and 3 or more. If we hit him, we will win the game. Something that specific. Tony Gonzalez, when we get in the red zone, we're going to double team Tony Gonzalez. If we do that, we'll win the game. Just to kind of give you an example of what he would say in those meetings. And sure as shit, man, we'd do those things and we'd win these games. And then it was complete and utter buy-in. And so we started figuring out that we had the smartest coach of all the coaches in the NFL. And if we just kind of did what he wanted, and there was a lot of guys that had to take back seats. A lot of guys. Drew Bledsoe had to take a back seat. At times, there's other guys that had to take reduced.
You had to take a back seat at one point.
I had to take a back seat for the greater good, if you will, and kind of accept your role, even though it was more of a diminished role or your role wasn't as prominent as maybe it used to be. If you didn't accept that, then you were out of there and maybe weren't a part of the winning. So a lot of guys had to kind of learn to, accept different roles and be okay with that in the name of winning.
A couple of chats coming in. This is epic. People are loving the interview today. I mentioned Zeke Elliott. Saquon Barkley did go 2 overall, so I probably Shouldn't discredit that. Any funny Ted Washington stories?
Ted Washington was one of my favorite teammates. He wasn't here very long. Ted was the biggest human being I've ever seen. So there's the two guys that I played with that I stand next to, and I am like, I mean, I feel like I'm a shrimp next to Willie McGinnis. Have you ever stood next to Willie McGinnis?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then the next guy is Ted Washington. Ted Washington, for a nose tackle, I mean, the guy's 6'6". And the weight is debatable. There's different, you hear different weights. One thing you do not tease Ted Washington about is his weight. Do not tease. I forget who it was. Someone teased him about his weight, and Ted, I mean, Ted, all he has to do is kind of look at you, and you cowered. But as big as Ted was, you don't ever rib him about his weight. He was listed at, I don't know, I think somebody said in the program like 330. You know, Ted was 400 plus. That's how big he was. But you do not call Ted out on that. All right, so just stay away from that. He gets a little sensitive about that.
Ted Washington listed at 6'5", 375.
Go up. He's bigger than that. I mean, and you know what? It's funny. You know where you really you see guys in a different. When you see guys in a different athletic arena, you really can appreciate how athletic they are in the arena that you play in. I've seen Ted Washington play basketball, and I'm like, this guy is got great feet, got great handling ability. I mean, guys, you forget that.
Wilfork, I heard, was a great basketball player. I heard he played quarterback like when he was in his younger days because he was that athletic.
It's the thing is, you got to understand the defensive linemen and offensive linemen, as big as they are, they're still phenomenal athletes.
Hey, what was the drill that Belichick used to do? Where if a lineman caught a punt, you guys wouldn't have to do sprints or something like that. Did that happen when you were with the Patriots?
It happened all the time, and I'm trying to think who it was. You know, Matt Light was kind of the guy that Bill would designate to catch the punt, and it usually was like at the end of the second day of mini camp, and it was one of these things where do we go for the third day? Some teams are skating out on the third day, or you cut practice short, and it all depends on whether or not the offensive lineman that Belichick picked would catch the punt, right? And I almost feel like that was a Parcells thing. So I can't remember who all the guys are. I mean, Max Lane's been out there to catch punts. Matt Light was always out there. But if you've ever tried to catch a punt, it is so hard.
Spiral.
It is so hard. And trying to kind of position yourself is a lot harder than you think. But so we always had a good laugh at the expense of the lineman that Bill picked to go out there and catch it because it wasn't pretty. But that was something that you got to have levity in this game, man. You got to have, as intense as football is, mentally draining and taxing as it is physically and mentally, you got to have some fun, man. And so good coaches know when to put a little levity into practice.
A couple more chats coming in. Ted, always wondered what really happened with Andy Katzenmoyer. Was he that good?
Man, Casey, Andy Katzenmoyer, there's two players that I would watch on our practice field, Joe. And I would say I would just watch them in practice, and I would be like, on another level. Like, it's like you watch somebody and it's like he's not even tired. Like, does Andy ever get tired? Like Andy Katzenmoyer. Then they're both two guys in my career that I played with that I just thought athletically and skill-wise were so much more gifted than everybody else. Both come from Ohio State. One was Andy Katzenmoyer. The other one was Terry Glenn. Wow. It was like Andy was so naturally gifted, so naturally strong, so naturally had great endurance and strength and speed, okay? So much more gifted than any of us. The problem was up here, right? Mm-hmm. All right. I think it was a very difficult transition to go from a very heralded, accomplished collegiate football player. The guy won the Buckus 2 times. All right. And I'll never forget, Al Groh, my old defensive coordinator, came into a meeting room one time, and he said to me, this Andy Katzenmoyer kid at Ohio State, he's going to be a great linebacker in the NFL one day. And I'll never forget Al saying that to me. And so, sure as shit, we drafted him. And Pete Carroll, 97, I believe, drafted him in the late 20s. He came, and you know what was interesting, Joe? So Andy was so just just built like a goddess and so athletic. But he did not have the best instincts. You know, how can he be such a great linebacker? The NFL game is faster. You got to read guards. It's the defenses aren't designed for you to make a lot of the plays, which like it was in Ohio State. Is the theory I'm told. And so Andy had a hard time, I think, sometimes with the instincts. But what really did Andy in, unfortunately, and this is nothing to really, kid about, is he had a neck injury. And I forget he hurt his neck, okay? And he was cleared to play and just didn't feel comfortable going out there. And I feel like it was a little bit of Belichick kind of pressing and pressing. And Andy
he had pressure anyways because he was a first-round pick, and
right.
So, right. I mean, think about it. The coach is, he's got his own pressure, the coach, the organization, so there's a lot on the line there. And I'm sure
it's hard to really fault. I just don't think, I don't know how much he loved the game. I think he was there's guys that are so good, Joe, so good, so naturally gifted that, football almost is easy for him. I just know how much they love it. And I think the injury combined with the fact, I just think he lost his love of football were probably the combinations of him saying, I'm done,
Yeah. All right. Ryan's checking in. He thinks the first three were the better of the two dynasties. I got 15 more minutes here, Ted, and I just want to ask a couple more questions and we'll have some fun. You mentioned Pete Carroll, Bill Parcells. The Patriots Hall of Fame finalists came out last week. Richard Seymour, Mike Vrabel, and then Wes Welker, Logan Mankins added to the list. I think Bill Parcells should be in. I don't know if you have any Bill Parcells stories that we can get to, but of those guys, Seymour, Vrabel, Welker, Mankins, who do you think will be the finalists this year?
Oh, man, obviously I'm partial to the first two guys, Seymour and Vrabel. I think obviously they should both get in, but you know what? At the end of the day, if of all those names, you say who's the best of all those, it's Wes Welker. I think Wes, I don't know, I just have such a great amount of respect for Wes, for what he was able to do for this team. He was a chain mover like Troy Brown was, like Kevin Falk was, just that guy that you needed on third down. He came up with so many big plays. He was so productive. I mean, didn't he have 100 catches for 6 years in a row here?
But you mentioned instinct, athletic ability.
Toughness.
Couldn't win the big games.
Right. Yeah. But hey, okay. But I mean, let's face it.
That's a talk radio guy there. Okay.
That is, man. Football is the most interdependent sport there is. And particularly that position. So much of your success depends on, does the offensive line block?
Yeah.
Quarterback get you the ball where it needs to be. So I don't want to hold that against West. I don't.
Okay. Yeah. Just talk radio. That's all.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah, West deserves to get in, and so does Seymour. Jay, so does Seymour. Seymour was, Seymour should too, man. And Parcells, damn it, he should get in too.
Oh my God! So, you've teased this to me. Because when we do shows together, we go off the rails, which is great. It's fun. Like we're on the weekends. Like this is what we do. But you've tried to tell me this story about the Super Bowl. You guys lose to Green Bay, and. Can you tell me what happened? The bus ride home. What happened? What happened in the locker room? You guys lose the game. You get off the field. Green Bay. Tell me everything.
Yeah. So that 1996 Bill Parcells last year here. It started percolating the first week of Super Bowl week. So you had 2 weeks in between the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. And all of a sudden, he started hearing these talks of Bill Parcells going to the Jets. And you're like, what? You just, we're so good right now. We're building something here. And it became the big storyline that whole week leading up to the Super Bowl. And you weren't sure, you just didn't know. But you were starting to really mount the rumors. And so it was really hard to kind of ignore. And I just thought, man, well, we're really gonna kind of figure it out after the game. Win or lose, we're gonna kind of see where Bill is in that headspace, and kind of maybe he'll show his hand a little bit. And Joe, after we lost to the Super Bowl against Green Bay, and Bill, we come in, you could just tell by the tone and tenor and his delivery that he was moving on, that he wasn't coming back. And that was heartbreaking. That was heartbreaking. Do I think it interfered with our preparation that week? Maybe a little bit. But my overall impression of Bill Parcells was he was my absolute favorite coach. His style, the way he approached the game, how he communicated. He had an emotional investment in his players doing well. He, guys that he respected and liked, you could tell that because how he communicated with you. And that was important to me as a player. I like coaches that would, communicate and show that they had personal interest in seeing you do well. And that was Bill Parcells, man. And I absolutely loved him. And he goes to the Jets. And it was the weirdest dynamic because he goes to the Jets and I'm playing for the Patriots. And I wanted to impress him every time I played against him. Because if you're a Parcells guy, all right, it's the best feeling ever because Bill in your corner, it gives you a ton of kind of, self-confidence to go out there and play really well. And I loved him for that, man. Bill was great, man. But that was tough to see him go, considering we just played for a Super Bowl.
Oh, that one still gets me, man. I'll never forget sitting on my couch and fucking Brett Favre takes his helmet off.
Oh, do you know what happened on that play? So we rarely blitzed that season. That 96 season, we were a basic 34 cover 2, and we did it's better than everybody, and we just execute. Every now and then we would go to the well to run a blitz. I think it was the third or fourth play of the game. It was at least the first series. And we called a blitz, okay? Safety's down. Brett sees it, and he audibles. And there was a slight hesitation. Willie Clay and I were both calling the defense, but I deferred to Willie in that instance at that time to get us out of the blitz and back into a safer call when you see the quarterback audible. So if the quarterback audible, check, he sees, okay, we've shown our blitz. Let's get out of the blitz and go back to a safer coverage so that he can't execute the play he wants. We didn't. We did not get out of the blitz.
And you never blitzed.
It's Andre Rison, right, up the sideline. I think Lawyer, God bless him, had a tough cover on that one, and he gave up that early touchdown. And that's the play where Brett Favre's running around without his helmet on. Yeah. That's the first touchdown of that game, boy. I wanted to eat him, boy.
still to this day, I hate Favre for that. A couple more things here. Just wanted to get through. The Drew Bledsoe E60. I know you were a part of that.
Yeah.
What were your feelings when Bledsoe went down and Brady was coming in?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag. I'm a Drew guy through and through, and Drew's one of my closest friends on the team, and we're still friends today. And so that was a difficult thing. However, so when Drew goes down, he gets hurt. Hurt around the world by Mo Lewis. It was that was an era in which players truly did not lose their position because of injury. Like it was just kind of this, unwritten rule, if you will, in the NFL. Especially a decorated player like Drew. He was an accomplished player, obviously at that point. We just assumed he was going to get his job, and it was there's a stark contrast in personalities between Drew and Tom. One being the enthusiasm. Drew's just a chill guy. I mean, one of the most chill guys you'll ever meet. Great guy, great team, and I love him. Tom comes in here, and he's like this youthful little puppy dog, and he is like, come on, guys, let's go. And he's getting he's screaming in practice, and he's getting excited, and he has got more enthusiasm than – honestly, like it took me back to my high school days. It's like, dude, chill out, man. We got a lot of games, man. You're going to run out of steam. But there was something that endeared, I think, a lot of us to Tom because of how he approached the game. He was so excited, gets so pumped up in practices. And so it was like, okay, this is kind of refreshing. This is different. And when the time came that Drew got cleared to play and he didn't get it, it could have divided the locker room, but I give Drew a lot of credit for not kind of backdoor politicking, if you will. In private, would he vent his frustrations? You're damn right. And he did with me, but it was not something that was going to be for public consumption because we started winning, and that was the main thing. And so I thought, Drew handled that with grace and dignity. He might have a different way of kind of, sharing that about how him and Bill handled it. But the team accepted it because we were winning. Plus, there was such the likability factor was so high with Tom that we wanted to make sure we supported him too. But we also felt bad for Drew. And when he got to come in the AFC Championship game against Pittsburgh and throw that pass to David Patton, it was it was great. We all loved Drew, and because he was such a classy guy, and we were happy that he got that moment. And then we didn't really know who was going to be the starter going into the Super Bowl.
Right.
And Bill,
the ankle injury.
Yep, he went with Tom and paid off. Yeah.
Who will be more successful, Bill Belichick without Tom Brady or Tom Brady without Bill Belichick?
I mean, it's a fascinating question, and I can't wait to find out. To me, this is an interesting time. I think from our perspective, Joe, people that cover the team, I can't wait to see because I think Bill Belichick has wanted to coach without Tom for a while now. Okay. I think he has really wanted to show that he can win without Tom. He's got a massive ego. I mean, let's face it. I mean, a lot of guys at that level do, but Bill really wants to, I think, show that he can win without Tom. And I'm fascinated to see that. I will say initially, my first gut was to go with, I've always been more pro of coach than the player. In this instance, I just think even though Bill can be a complete asshole a lot of times, he's the greatest coach of all time. Like it's undeniable. But I just think the schedule this year is very daunting. This team, I think, is going to have a little bit of a crisis in confidence initially because when you have a great quarterback in Tom, it covers up a lot of the warts, a lot of the underlying issues you might have. And it gives guys, I think, this kind of ability to feel like, hey, we can win any game because we have Tom. Now that Tom's gone, it's going to be – I think that collective confidence is going to be a fragile thing. It really is. And it can kind of teeter one way or the other pretty quickly. I just think when you have 3 West Coast games and the schedule they have with so much question marks at that position that I think it's going to be initially – I think Tom's going to have more success in Tampa initially. But I think, and I don't know how many more years Tom's going to play, but I think there's going to be a setback here, and then I think Bill figures it out after this year. But honestly, it's the best. It's one of the storylines I can't wait to see kind of unveil in front of us this year.
One thing I wanted to mention here, I don't think the Patriots are going to draft a premium quarterback in the draft.
I don't know.
This class isn't that great. Like in my opinion, like Burrow is good. I think Herbert is overrated. He's big. Jordan Love has a high upside, but I wouldn't take him in the first round. And just Tua, I think, is a polarizing figure. Can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
Everyone else, I think you can catch somebody later in the rounds. And I don't even want to talk much about the quarterback because I think Stidham's their guy going forward here.
I think Stidham's the guy too, man. I really do. I don't see him going for a quarterback in the first round, maybe something in the middle rounds. But I think they're going to love the one they're with, Joe. And I think they're going to ride and die with Stidham. And as Hoyer as it's not a sexy insurance plan, but it's nonetheless, it's an insurance plan.
All right, let's have some fun here. I do a segment called Murray's Musings. And I actually, one question before we do that. Which teammate has Ted stayed the closest with over the years?
Oh yeah, that's easy. And I mentioned him already. It's Todd Collins.
Yep.
Todd Collins for sure is the guy that I've stayed in.
Hey, what game did he have a pick six?
Yep, that was it was Miami Dolphins. Okay, and it was the wild card weekend. Funny story about that. So we played. It was 1997, I believe. We played the Miami Dolphins in the last regular season game in Miami. All right, to go to the playoffs. And then we hosted Miami the following week in Foxborough in the wild card weekend. Okay, so we play them back-to-back weeks. Dan Marino, we're sitting there watching film, and Swamp was all over this. Todd was all over it. He's like, he's not changing his audibles. The signal he would give,
yeah,
was
they didn't do it in a playoff game. They didn't change the can you believe that?
What do you
they didn't give you a dummy plays the week before. They stuck with the same things. A Hall of Fame quarterback did that.
You can see Todd before he picks off that slant route. Look at me, and he's like, slant. And I'm like, okay, dude. And sure shit, he picks off that slant route, takes it to the house, and I was so pumped for him because Dan Marino, as good as he was, man, I don't know, just didn't think to change the audibles.
It was cold.
Todd
it was cold, and he wanted out. That's what it was.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So let's do some musings here. So there was a competitive eating competition this past week. It's going to continue to happen. So Joey Chestnut's like the world-renowned, like, big eater. 2 pounds of bologna is the first round. 48 Oreos and a half gallon of milk the second round. 10 pounds of baked beans, and then the final is like a bunch of cup of noodle soup. So if I asked you, what is the one thing that you could be successful with in a competitive eating contest?
Oh my God. Great question. Man, that's what could I eat?
Because I saw you eat some Kowloon food one night.
Yeah, I can get out to the Kowloon food. Dude, I'm all about the chicken nuggets at Chick-fil-A.
Oh,
I mean, I could probably put a lot of those away, man. I mean, I could go grilled, or it doesn't matter. I don't know how many, but I could kill those things. And I feel like there's a barbecue question maybe coming up too. So I don't want to.
Oh yeah, well, we'll get to that in a minute.
I almost went there, but
so real quick, okay, cool. So real quick, Joe Buck was offered to do play-by-play for porn for $1 million. He turned it down. You wouldn't turn that down, right? That in someday, do you want to get into play-by-play?
Yeah. I'd be the color guy. I'd be more of a color guy. Maybe exactly. I could do the color for a lot of the, there's a few genres. I won't get into exactly. I don't want to totally, show you my hand, what genres I prefer, but it's got to be high quality. So, it's got to be a really high quality HD kind of viewing. So it's got to be something that's, home video for
like a point of view, maybe. I don't know.
you give me a Brazzers scene at a Brazzers in one of the genres I like. I'll do it for $1 million. You kidding me? I'd be happy to do that. Like, you should be flattered, Joe Buck, that people are offering you that kind of money, man. Well, step out of your comfort zone a little bit, man. I'm a traditional guy, but not as much as maybe what people think. I come from an interesting background, so I have more liberal sensibilities than maybe people expect. So I'd be all over that, man.
Hey, did you see the Tiger King at all? Have you popped in at all?
Had to watch it, man. Okay. Fascinating. Fascinating.
It was you did watch it. Okay, yeah.
Oh, I watched it. Oh, dude, it was like the first. You know what I crave sometimes, Joe, is chicken fried steak. Chicken fried steak with mashed potatoes and gravy. And that's like what Lion King was the first episode or two. But then I kind of got full on it. It was like I got a little bit full, but nonetheless I finished the whole thing. And it was fascinating to watch that whole thing.
My buddy Jimmy, Tony Romo should do the play-by-play. He could predict the next move. That's a good one here. Okay, and then I wanted to ask you this: the Jordan documentary came out last night. I thought it was excellent, and I can't wait to see more of it. So don't be biased. Better dynasty, Patriots dynasty or Bulls dynasty?
Okay. Which one do you think's harder to do? Do you think it's
NFL?
I mean, let's face it. The Bulls dynasty was insane, right? I mean, it was insane. What they went? What 5, 6? 6. So that's. But winning 3 in football for me is like the equivalent of winning 6, maybe in the NBA. I'm gonna say it's harder to do what we did than what the Bulls did because you just need maybe one or two players in basketball to win the whole thing. And so, I'm gonna say it was harder to do what we did.
What's your favorite movie of all time, and do you have a favorite sports movie of all time or football movie?
Yep. All right. Favorite movie of all time. I'm gonna have to go, and there's a few up there. Okay. One, I'm a huge fan. I can watch it over and over and over again. Avatar. I'm the biggest Avatar fan out there. So I love Avatar. I've always been I don't know what it is. I like cinematography, and the visuals to me are incredible. And I do kind of dig the storyline. I'm a little, I'm into that kind of stuff. And so just the storyline, was awesome to me. And so I can't wait for another one of those. And they're supposed to make a sequel to my original favorite movie of all time, which was Top Gun. I'm the big
yeah.
right? So I love Top Gun. They're supposed to come out with Top Gun 2 soon, maybe this Christmas. So I'm my fingers crossed for that. And then lastly, honorable mention, favorite movie all time is Avatar. Second place, Top Gun, and then I'll put Shawshank Redemption in there.
Oh, I love Shawshank. Any football movies? Like I love The Program. That was my shit growing up.
I already mentioned the one football movie that was my favorite. All the Right Moves.
All right, well, that's right.
I love All the Right Moves. 52 Stack Monster. Great break.
So I know your old man. Talk about timing. Your old man sold the Rib Tickler. About within the past year. You are a barbecue guy. What's your go-to barbecue plate?
Okay, here's my absolute favorite thing to get when I would go to the Rib Tickler. My parents sold their restaurant after 35 years about 8 months ago. It's doing really, really well. They do have a drive-through feature at that restaurant. Cool. So it's the one thing that's kind of keeping it afloat right now. But my go-to was what we call a meat stuffed potato. Okay, I could have a meat stuffed potato. It's our chopped beef marinated in our barbecue sauce on a baked potato with all the trimmings. That was my absolute favorite thing to eat at the Rib Tickler. It was the meat stuffed potato, and I would put our ranch style beans on there to give it an extra kick. And that was my go-to, man. I loved it.
Finally, I know the answer here, but which player in the NFL did you love to compete against the most, and who did you dominate the most?
Oh, do you know the answer to this?
I'm going to say Jerome Bettis.
Okay, well, I love Jerome. Okay, look this up. True, Jerome Bettis never had 100 yards on us, ever. I love going against Jerome. He was just, he was a really fun adversary to go against. He made it fun, and he was just he was one of the better running backs in the NFL. So I love going against him. I love going against Reuben Brown, a guard for the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. Larry Allen for the Dallas Cowboys. Nate Newton, Emmitt Smith. I loved playing against those teams. And I love playing against Peyton Manning and the Colts too. I'm 7-1 against Peyton Manning. 7-1 on the teams I played with against Peyton Manning. So those are some of the guys I absolutely loved going against, and had definitely mutual respect extended between us. And so I loved playing against, and I like playing against Brett Favre too, man. I did.
I know I've kept you too late. Just with the draft coming up, what type of defensive players does Bill Belichick look for? So far today, you've mentioned instincts, ability. What type of linebacker do you think he's looking at in the draft?
Okay, there's two ways to keep a job in the NFL, Joe. Two ways, okay? You're either pretty good at a few things or you dominate at one thing. Can you guess what category I fell into? I was just really good at one thing. Could I hold my own against the pass? Absolutely. But was there maybe a better option to against pass coverage? Yeah, bring in Roman Pfeiffer. He's better covering tight ends than I was. But I was very good at stopping the run. But Bill really, really covets the versatile player. And so the guy that can do multiple things, if you can pass rush and you can cover and you can stop the run, that is ideally what Bill looks for. And so that's what he wants really. And even if it's a pass rusher, he wants a guy that can drop into pass coverage. He wants a guy that can work stunts with somebody else, not just as a one-on-one pure pass rusher. So he looks for versatility in guys that can do more than just one thing. And so that's what he looks for. And that's what I'm sure the quality of whatever player he gets in this year's draft is going to have, at least on the defensive side.
All right, he's Ted Johnson, 3-time Super Bowl champion. Follow him at Teddy J Radio. I'm sure we'll be back together in studio at some point, Ted.
Do you remember our last show? Do you remember what our last show together was, man?
Dude, was the Kobe Bryant show?
It was. It's so you and I had a great show lined up that day, man. You were doing what you're doing now a little bit. It was kind of like it was a time to reminisce. I don't remember exactly what was going on, but it was kind of one of those periods in the calendar. It was like it was time to look back, and so we were. Yeah. We had our feet kicked up. We're telling stories. And I'll never forget your reaction when it came across Twitter. You were just, oh my God, oh my God. And so that was the last show we did, was the Kobe Bryant. And then God bless us, man. We had to do 2.5 hours of Kobe coverage, and it wasn't easy, but we navigated. You did a really good job, I think, of navigating that show. That was the last show we did a couple months ago.
Well, hopefully we could get back to that show, and because I had all of them lined up. We had the 96 Super Bowl. We were going to 01, 03, 04. Dude, I had clips of you like mashing fullbacks and like stopping Edgar Bennett for like tackles behind the line of scrimmage. It was all lined up. Mason had them all ready to go. So that show is that show's in the can for the future. So
sounds good, buddy. We'll save it for another day.
Ted, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for everything. And I hope to see you soon, man. And good luck with everything with you and your family during quarantine, bud.
Thanks, brother. Hope you're well, man. I enjoyed today, bud. Let's do it again soon, okay?
You got it, Ted. Appreciate it, bud. I'll talk to you. I will talk to Ted soon. Ted Johnson, great guy. Great dude. The one thing I'll tell you about Ted, he treats you like everybody else. He doesn't, the guy played professional football, won 3 Super Bowls. But like he treats me like he treats everybody else. Where he's one of the guys. When we go out and like go to events, we invite Ted. He actually comes. He comes and hangs out with us. Like we went to the Kowloon one night. Dude came, hung out with us. We ate fucking like kings. So yeah, I love Ted Johnson. He'll always be 52 to me, and I'm his boy. So I appreciate him coming on. We got a ton of draft coverage this week. Here on the show, and I just want to show you what we do have coming up. Hey, the show's not over. I got more shit today because it's 4:20, and I gotta tell you some of my favorites. So Ted Johnson's done. We got another Super Bowl champion coming up tomorrow in Mike Flynn, who won a Super Bowl with the Ravens in 2000, one of the best defenses of all times. He was the center for Trent Dilfer that year. And then Mike Lockhart, he's from the Fantasy Football Show on 98.5 The Sports, but a huge draft guy, and we'll get all his thoughts on the draft. Bob Sosi, the voice of the New England Patriots, joins us on Thursday, and then Friday we got Dr. Football John Serenides, one of the best guys in the business at breaking down college football. He's a coach as well, so the guy really knows his shit. Programming announcements. I will be on Zoe and Beetle tomorrow on 98.5 The Sports Up. So the show will move to 4 p.m. tomorrow. So I'll be on 98.5 The Sports Hub and NBC Sports Boston from 10 to 2. Fly home, and then we'll do a show beginning at 4 o'clock Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. So you'll get double the myrrh this week. And I just wanted to bring up one announcement, and I probably should have prepped this a little while ago. But last week when I had Sean Silver on, we discussed doing a macho off or a macho man off. He's got one of the best impersonations when it comes to the Macho Man, Randy Savage. I reached out to Dan Sauter, comedian Dan Sauter. He said he will do a macho off with Sean Silver, and we're going to do it this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. So we're going to have Sean Silver on one side, comedian Dan Sauter on the other. I'm going to mediate it, and they're going to go back and forth on who is the best Macho Man voice impersonation. We're going to do that Wednesday night live at 7 p.m. So I want to thank Dan Sauter for getting involved. I met him a couple of months back. So I'm glad he's going to join the show. That's going to be fun. Wednesday night, 7 p.m. We're going to call it That's Savage. Sean Silver, Dan Sauter, this Wednesday night. So I wanted to announce that for those who've been sticking around. That's going to be fun as hell. A couple of other things I just wanted to bring up before we get out of here. I mentioned the announcement. Today is 420, so happy 420 to all our friends. I wanted to do a top 10 stoner movie listing for those that are out there. I sent it to myself. I'm trying to find it. But number one for me is Half Baked. That is my favorite stoner movie, by far. Like my favorite stoner movie. And I'm trying to pull it up because I wrote it down here. So I want to get back to that in a minute. But yeah, Half Baked is number one for me. Grandma's Boy, number two. My favorite scene is when dude comes in and he's like, give me the good shit, give me that, and roll it all up. And let's smoke it. And Dante is like my favorite character. Dante is my favorite character. from Grandma's Boy. So I got Half Baked, Grandma's Boy. Friday is one of my favorites. So Friday to me is like one of my favorite movies of all time. Craig, you got knocked the fuck out, Smokey. Like those, that's like one of my favorite stoner movies of all time. And then we have Dazed and Confused. Of course, we love that movie. Any Cheech and Chong. Up in Smoke is my favorite when they make the truck out of weed and it starts burning and everybody's just sitting outside the concert. That is like one of my favorites when it comes to stoner movies. That is right up there for me. And then I'm a big Harold and Kumar fan. Like there's nothing funnier than like he's in the jail and he could smell the bag of weed and he just starts thinking about it and then he starts hugging it and holding it and he like marries the bag of weed. That is like one of my funniest moments. How High with Method Man and Redman, how they became friends. Hey, got papers, got weed, boom. And then he becomes like this botanist of how to make weed. Super Troopers, awesome movie. It's all about the ganj. To me, that's right up there when it comes to stoner movies. Pineapple Express, the fact that he could smoke it, drop it on the ground, and somebody can sniff what that is, awesome to me. That is awesome to me. So I'm a huge Pineapple Express fan. So right now I got 9. And number 10 for me, I'm going to throw it in there. There are other ones, but I'm going to throw in The Big Lebowski. I love what he's always smoking a roach with a drink in his hand and playing the drums. So that's my top 10 stoner movies. It is 420 today, so happy to everybody. Some guy named Angry Joe Marty. That's not me. There's a lot of Joe Martys out there, by the way. That's why I kind of went with Joey Murr for a long time. Super Troopers 2 wasn't bad. It just wasn't as good as part 1. So wanted to throw that in there. And then finally, tomorrow, we have a Better Call Saul recap. It is the final Better Call Saul of the season. So guess we'll find out tomorrow what's going to happen with that. But that is one of my favorite shows going right now. So for those sitting in quarantine right now, you can binge Better Call Saul. What I think is going to be awesome is I'm going to watch Better Call Saul in its entirety and then watch Breaking Bad in its entirety. I can't wait to watch it backwards. Like I am anticipating that so much. And I can't wait for that one to happen. So a lot today has happened. Ted Johnson, 3-time Super Bowl champ, had him on the show today. We have the Dan Soder versus Sean Silver, the Macho Off. We're going to call it that. Savage this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. I should also throw in that I'm going to be doing a over-under podcast with Dan Livshatz, I believe, Wednesday night as well. And we're got all your prop bets. So if you go to over under 985 on iTunes or Google Play, I actually gave out 3 picks from this weekend. So you can hear those picks there. And we're going to give out a ton more and do probably like a 2-hour live broadcast. It probably will be on Twitter, but also maybe do it on Twitch. I was thinking about maybe going over to Twitch. So we got that going on this week. We got, and today again, 420 top 10 stoner movies. I'll post all of this stuff today. And now you can hear Just Sitting Here on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. I got it up on iTunes now. Working on the Google Play though. Still working on that. So any episode we've ever had, everything is recorded. So that's what I'm doing in my downtime right now. And we got a big week. So tomorrow, Mike Flynn from 98.5 The Sports Hub, Super Bowl champion with the Baltimore Ravens. I can't wait to talk to him tomorrow. We're going to have a ton of fun. He's a good dude. Like we have a ton of fun and can't wait to kind of get back in his head about football. There's one thing is he played football, but like to him, it was like, oh, it's so hard. So I like his, I like when he does that. So that is tomorrow's show. It's draft week this week. Again, we're going to be here tomorrow, 4 p.m. The next 3 days, 4 p.m. I'll be on with Gresh and Zoe. Just Sitting Here tomorrow on 98.5 The Sports Hub from 10 to 2 p.m. So it should be a fun week. Want to thank everybody for tuning in, everybody for their support. Enjoy your 420. Smoke them if you got them. I'm Joe Murray, Just Sitting Here. We'll talk to you tomorrow.